The vines on the gentle slopes outside Amboise still glimmered with dawn dew when I cycled into the festival grounds, panniers rattling with mason jars labelled hibiscus lime garnet, chestnut pu'er, and 9 other experimental blends I was planning to photograph for my blog. The Montgolfier Cup, Europe's most eccentric hot air balloon race, wasn't on my original itinerary, but an invitation from Evelyn Carraway of Aurora Tea Co. had fluttered into my inbox 2 weeks earlier. Clara Finch, it read. We need a palette that travels as freely as these balloons. Come ride with us, brew in the clouds, and tell the world. I'd tasted enough of Aurora's teas to know she meant it literally. Each crew infused a signature blend during the flight, then poured it for judges the moment they landed. Altitude terroir, they called it. I called it irresistible content. The launch field looked like someone had spilled a giant paint box across the grass. Velvet greens, tangerine stripes, saffron mandalas. Envelopes lay supine, giant lungs waiting for breath. I snapped photos while volunteers wrestled burners, clamped baskets, and topped off propane. Beyond them rose the grandstand where fans nursed steaming cups already. I recognized one figure pacing behind the rail. Marcel de Vries, the Belgian tea smoker, who turned lapsang souchong into an Olympic sport of aromatics. His copper hair was slicked back, but anxiety made it spring at the temples. We'd sparred in print once or twice. He called my elderflower Darjeeling a floral mishap, but it was polite rivalry. Evelyn waved me over to Aurora's balloon, a satin indigo orb stenciled with constellations. Our theme is Night Navigator, she greeted, tucking a stray braid beneath her flight cap. When the sun climbs, we'll still be drinking stars. She handed me a mug. The tea was a black tea base with dried blueberry, flickers of Szechuan pepper, and just enough lavender to make the blueberry taste like it had secrets. Warm citrus wind cut across the field, lifting the scent. I rummaged in my panniers for my tasting notebook. This has got altitude already, I said, scribbling. We'll finish it up there, Evelyn replied. Now meet Grant, our pilot. Grant was a lean New Zealander with sun-whitened lashes who treated the envelope lines the way cellists treat strings. He joked that whichever of us brewed the best cup would have to marry him and carry his propane tanks at the reception. The race rules were straightforward. Launch at 9, navigate a 25-kilometer course along the Loire, land in a predefined vineyard, present a brewed infusion made solely with water boiled during flight, and return with GPS data showing every waypoint hit. First across the finish did not automatically win. Flavor counted for 50%. It was a tea race in the sky, half cartography, half gastronomy, and 100% spectacle. I spent the safety briefing half listening, half composing blog headings. Aroma at altitude, how steeping below the stratosphere changes flavor, felt like clickbait gold. The other half of the field produced their own tea ambitions. An Italian team blending bergamot zest directly in the basket to make an airborne Earl Grey, a Japanese duo carrying refrigerated sakura petals, and, of course, Marcel, whose crew had set up a small smoker beside their basket, funneling applewood fumes into a tin of rolled oolong. Every few minutes he opened the lid, letting a plume escape like a jealous genie. Even from across the field, the smell curled toward me, campfire, honey, and peat. Grant fired the burners at 8:55. The envelope trembled, partially rose, settled again like a creature deciding whether to stand. Farther left, someone already floated skyward, the Italian team singing Puccini. Then a hiss cut the music, that loud, unmistakable gurgle of propane igniting in a rush. I turned and saw Marcel's ground crew struggling with a valve. The flame flared, subsided, then caught properly. The envelope, a deep brass colour, bulged upright. At 9:02 the flag dropped. Grant opened the taps, and Night Navigator heaved upward. A moment later, gravity let go, and the field spun away, replaced by a widening carpet of vineyards stitched by silver roads. Within minutes, we were sliding over the river, altitude holding steady at 800 meters. The burners thundered every few minutes, punctuated by Evelyn's brisk instructions. Water to 75, leaves measured now, no cheating. She had installed a tiny gimbal stove in the corner of the basket. On it perched a retro stainless kettle, whose whistle had been replaced by a digital thermometer probe. Convection in the open air was trickier than any stovetop, but she'd practiced. I opened my phone and live-blogged the ascent until reception cut. Then I recorded voice notes for later, describing the changed odour. At ground level, the blueberries smelled like jam. Here they smelled like the idea of jam, more distant, less sugary, a cool phantom. Meanwhile, Evelyn trimmed peppercorns with small scissors, a ritualistic precision that made me unapologetically adore her. By 10 o'clock, we'd crossed the first waypoint. Grant pointed out other balloons strung along the course like bright punctuation, a comma of orange 300 meters above, a question mark of emerald nearer to the river. The Italians had pulled ahead. So had Marcel's brass giant, visible as a glint near the sun. Someone at his basket waved, probably Marcel himself, flamboyant as always. 5 minutes later, everything changed. A voice crackled over race radio, brittle with static. Team Sauvage to control, requesting emergency descent clearance. Sauvage was Marcel's sponsorship name. Pilot incapacitated, possibly medical. Grant grabbed the handset. Control, this is Aurora. Confirm pilot incapacitated. Over. Affirmative, came the reply. Crew reports Mr. De Vries collapsed. A beat of distorted silence. Balloon ascending uncontrolled. Evelyn's eyes widened above her scarf. Grant muttered a curse and adjusted our vent line, preparing to assist if called. But in a sky without roads, assistance is mostly altitude and prayer. We couldn't simply pull alongside. The radio fed us more disjointed pieces. Marcel had been talking about temperature when he froze mid-sentence, gripped the edge of the basket, and slumped. His co-pilot, a barista named Elise, was trained for emergencies but not solo piloting. She'd pulled the red line too hard, collapsed part of the envelope, and the balloon was now bleeding altitude faster than ideal. First too high, now too low. The next transmission reported they'd levelled at 300 meters, but needed landing space. Control flagged a clearing east of us, and several teams diverted to make airspace. We watched the brass balloon sag, drift, and finally settle with a lopsided bounce. Paramedics raced from a standby helicopter. I stared down until distant figures loaded a stretcher. The radio gave no more details. Racing resumed, but the festive current had gone thin, like over-steeped tea. Evelyn clenched the kettle handle as if it might crack. Marcel's fit as a falcon. What could knock him out cold? Altitude sickness, stroke, dehydration. The list collided in my head. But a sharper thought followed. Tea. Everything today revolved around it. What if the drink he'd brewed betrayed him? The notion felt conspiratorial, yet my gut bubbled like an unvented kettle. Grant needed all focus returning to course, but Evelyn and I whispered while we adjusted venting. Marcel preceded every flight with meticulous hydration. He'd boasted yesterday about a secret stamina infusion. Could that have backfired? Evelyn bit her lip. If his thermos is involved, she said, I guarantee someone tampered. He's cavalier in interviews, but his lab's locked down tighter than a patent office. Her certainty jolted me. The idea of sabotage had already walked footpaths through my brain. Competitors doping tea to win? But hearing it voiced changed everything. I took out my notebook. An investigative narrative could eclipse any tasting article, but only if grounded, not gossip. We finished our course legs subdued. The midnight blue envelope glided over slate rooftops. Church bells chimed noon somewhere below. Evelyn's brew steeped precisely 4 minutes in water, Grant kept at 92 degrees by throttling the flame just enough. We decanted into travel flasks rimmed with silicone to prevent altitude spill. The aroma had softened, lavender now a hum behind berry thunder. For the first time I sipped without mindfulness, distracted by worry, and nearly scalded my tongue. We landed at the vineyard with a gentle skid, textbook Grant. Judges awaited under a marquee among ripening Chardonnay. They took notes, murmured appreciation, and shooed us toward recovery tables. Still, the race results looked secondary. Everyone wanted updates on Marcel. Rumours swirled: heart arrhythmia, carbon monoxide poisoning, allergic reaction. I lurked near officials until an EMT emerged to say Marcel was conscious but groggy, stable at Tours Hospital. That night the festival attempted normalcy. Jazz, lanterns, stalls selling spiced chai biscuits. I couldn't taste anything. My feet carried me to the medical tent where a nurse recognized my blogger badge and allowed me in with a warning, 10 minutes. Marcel lay propped by pillows, freckles stark against pale skin. Elise sat bedside. When she saw me, tears welled, then she collected herself. Clara, you know teas, she whispered. Smell this. She handed me a tin recovered from the basket. Applewood smoked Oolong, the pride of De Vries estates. It should have smelled resinous, sweet, and deep. Instead, a faint metallic edge prickled my nostrils, like sucking a coin. Next, she produced a small thermos half full of lukewarm liquid. I swirled it, inhaled. The smoke notes were there, but underneath lurked bitter almond and something medicinal. Digitalis, maybe? I'm no toxicologist, but taste buds earn odd talents. I turned to Marcel, whose voice rasped. Did you brew only with your leaves? I asked. He nodded weakly. Opened the tin this morning myself. I glanced at the clasp. No tampering marks obvious, but the hinge pin looked shinier than the rest. Replacement, perhaps? Elise added. The smoker was sealed all night. We took security photos. Nothing looked wrong. I wished I'd been there filming. A plastic evidence bag on the side table held 2 used tea bags. Standard issue, not De Vries style. Found these in the basket locker, Elise noted. Not ours. Marcel coughed. Someone tinkered. Would have died if Elise hadn't vented and landed. Anger flickered behind feverish eyes. Time was up. I squeezed his hand and promised to dig. My night became a mosaic of interviews. Ground crew reported seeing a man near Marcel's gear pre-dawn, wearing an official vest but no ID badge. Italian teammates remembered none of their crates inspected that morning, despite rules that every basket undergo final security. A volunteer confessed she'd been switched to a new shift by text message from a number not in her contact list. Threads emerged like veins in a tea leaf, small irregularities that brew into bitterness. At 1 a.m. I cornered Henri Laroche, the race director, outside his trailer. Henri is shaped like an oak barrel and smells of bergamot. He bristled at suggestions of sabotage, citing reputation, sponsors, lawsuits. But when I described the tin's metallic odor, his posture sagged. "We test for steroids in athletes, Ms. Finch," he muttered. "But we never imagined doping tea." By dawn, I had a suspect list. Disgruntled ex-employees from DeVries Smokery, radical coffee activists, yes, they exist, and one name circled in red, Crispin Holt, CEO of Cloud Crest Infusions. Cloud Crest had applied to enter the Montgolfier Cup this year, but missed the cut. Its marketing boasted "taste above the clouds," strikingly close to Aurora's tagline, and Marcel's altitudinal brewing. More telling was Crispin's bitter feud with Marcel over smoked leaf patents. I'd met Crispin once at a London tasting panel. He wore cologne that smelled like old coins, exactly that tang I'd detected. Coincidence? Or confirmation bias? I needed proof. The festival resumed that second morning with subdued crowds. Night Navigator's envelope billowed despite uncertain results. The final winners would be announced after lab tests of all teas, the committee declared. Evelyn and Grant prepped for a demonstration flight. I should have been documenting, but obsession had me prowling storage tents. Cloud Crest wasn't even present, yet their logo flashed unexpectedly on a shipping crate behind the staff commissary. Sticker fresh. I photographed it, then tested the lid. Unlocked. Inside were promotional packets of a new blend called Strato Zen. Ingredients listed Camellia sinensis, licorice root, natural almond essence, and proprietary herbals. Several packets were missing from the top row. Almond again. I dashed back toward the security checkpoint. A volunteer flagged me. "Director LaRoche wants you." Inside the control hub, Henri stood with 2 police officers and a clear evidence bag containing the same Strato Zen packet. Elise, pale but determined, had apparently found identical sachets wedged in the brass balloon's burner bracket during cleanup. Henri nodded at me. "Your nose might have saved this race, Miss Finch. We sent samples for chromatography. High levels of cyanogenic glycosides, amygdalin, enough to cause collapse at concentration brood." The officers outlined the rest. Surveillance review had identified a man wearing falsified volunteer attire, tailing multiple competitor balloons, including Marcel's, at dawn. Facial recognition hit. Crispin Holt. 2 hours later, he'd been arrested trying to board a train in Tours, a duffel full of Cloud Crest samples and printing equipment for fake badges. The motive was as petty as it was chilling. Sabotage the leading artisanal brewers, then rescue the market with Strato Zen's launch weeks later. A contamination scare would tarnish rivals, leaving Cloud Crest's brand, touted as independently tested and lab-pure, to ascend. Evelyn joined us just in time to hear the officers confirm Crispin's confession. She looked from me to Henry. "And the cup?" Henry straightened. "After additional testing, we will resume final judging this afternoon." He turned to me. "We'd like you on the tasting panel, Miss Finch. You uncovered the plot. We trust your palate." Being asked to judge the cup felt like someone crediting a teapot with steering the storm, but I accepted. That afternoon we gathered under the marquee again, though now plainclothes police monitored the perimeter. The aroma under the canvas was less jubilant, more reverent. Every team's infusion had been cleared by expedited lab analysis. Marcel, against doctor's advice, appeared in a wheelchair, insisted on presenting his brew brewed the night before last from a fresh, sealed tin accompanied by chain of custody paperwork. The judging table bore 8 thermal carafes. Each judge, 3 professionals, 2 sponsor reps, and me, used separate porcelain cups and palate-cleansing crackers. I approached the task as if the world's patience hinged on temperature and swirl. The Italian's high-altitude Earl Grey undulated with bergamot oils, but oxidation had muddied its citrus spark. A Kenyan Oolong surprised with melon notes, though finish lacked length. When our turn came, Evelyn poured Night Navigator, midnight blue label glinting. I lifted the cup. Steam carried blueberry first, no longer jammy or phantom, but balanced by lavender that now tasted like starlight smells, if starlight could crystallize on the tongue. Then a flicker. Peppercorn exhaled at the back palate, refreshing, like altitude itself in spice form. I forced professional impartiality, recorded notes, but my grin leaked anyway. Marcel's smoked oolong, untainted, emerged last. The applewood wove through honey depth with astonishing restraint, smoke as silk, not campfire. I tasted, swallowed, wrote stunned compliments. Scores tallied while cameras hovered. Finally, Henri returned, envelope in hand. He spoke about resilience, community, the vulnerabilities of both balloons and people, and how tea, ironically, had revealed treachery, but also helped solve it. Then he announced, first place, Aurora T. Koseu's Night Navigator. Evelyn squeezed my shoulders so hard the vertebrae rearranged. Grant whooped. Marcel applauded, genuine despite defeat, and raised his tin in salute. The crowd, spectators, crews, volunteers, erupted. For a fleeting second, I heard not cheers but the hiss of burners, felt rope rough under knuckles, smelled pepper and blueberry, and smoke combining into one impossible note. A scent. That evening, I drafted the blog post that would crash my site for the first time. It opened not with our win, but with a confession. I went looking for flavor at altitude and found a crime steeping beneath it. I recounted the metallic tang in the thermos, the crate behind the commissary, the strange almond shadows in Strato Zen. Photos followed, Crispin's arrest, Elise's relieved smile, Marcel tasting Night Navigator from his hospital mug. By the time lanterns bobbed over the Loire and fireworks powdered the sky, my article had been syndicated by 3 news outlets. Comments poured gratitude, disbelief, conspiracy theories, recipe requests. A few readers scolded me. How dare you exploit trauma for clicks? I replied that if tasting notes could thwart sabotage, then the world needed every nose and tongue to pay attention. As the festival tents dimmed, Evelyn and I brewed leftover Night Navigator atop a portable stove between our RVs. We sipped in silence a while, listening to vineyard crickets. At last, she said, "Travelling tea-blend blogger, balloon sleuth, what title do you want next?" I watched a lone balloon, tethered but restless, tug against its moorings under moonlight. Steam from my cup curled upward, meeting the sky halfway. "Whatever it is," I answered, "may it rise on honest heat." The kettle hummed agreement, and the night tasted of blueberry promises keeping watch over peppery stars.